Brethren, in John 3:16, the golden verse, you don't need to go there, you know that verse. It's taught that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. God so loved the world, showing the giving, selfless nature of this love. The word used here for love is the Greek word agapao. We spell that A-G-A-P-A-O. Agapao is a form of that verb. Love is something you do. The noun form of this word in Greek, the love you have, is agape, spelled A-G-A-P-E, like agape in English, but it's pronounced agape. We are told in 1 John 4:8 and 16 that this is also something that God is. God is love, it says. God is agape. He embodies it. And we have taught correctly that this kind of love, godly love, is outgoing, outflowing concern for others. This is the kind of love we must have. We see it extolled in 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. The original King James translates it there, charity, the idea being extending benevolence toward others. And for us, it involves doing as God says. I'll refer you to 1 John 5:3, which says, "For this is the love," the agape, "of God, that we keep his commandments." But brethren, I want to note here an important qualifier in this verse. For this is the agape of God, the agape that comes from God, godly agape. Is there another kind? For a long time there's been a misconception about the Greek noun agape and its verb form agapao. Perhaps you've heard this before, that in Greek there are three words for love: eros, meaning sexual love; philia, with the verb form phileo, meaning brotherly love; and agape, meaning selfless, outgoing love or godly love. But that is actually not quite right. And recently I've had to point this out a few times to various people in some online exchanges. I recall mentioning this briefly in a presentation that I gave to the GCE in 2015 on rightly dividing the word of truth, which I think I also gave here. And we actually published a whole article on this in United News 5 years ago in the January-February 2018 issue by Don Hooser, titled "Godly Love versus Agape Love." And I actually want to make a plug for that article today, as I think maybe a lot of people missed it. Do look this up on the internet and read it. Just go to ucg.org and search for Don Hooser, "Godly Love versus Agape Love." Maybe I can add a link when we post this. But anyway, I thought I should address this subject today to add some clarity and illustrate the importance of actual usage of words in doing biblical word studies, which we do want to do that. So brethren, what I want us to see today is this. While the words agape and agapao are often used for godly love, they are also used for kinds of love that are quite ungodly. Context tells us which. So again, agape and agapeo are often used for godly love, but they're also used for kinds of love that are quite ungodly, and the context is going to tell us. And the title is, Agape is not just godly love. Agape is not just godly love. So I'll have, this is a broad point, but under a heading, I'll give you verses showing agapao, meaning ungodly love, versus showing agapao, meaning ungodly love. We have this idea that, and I'd like you to turn over the book of John, we'll turn over to John 3, where we read in John 3:16, God so loved the world, but I'll show you something in verse 19 here in a second. But we have this idea that agape is restricted to godly or outgoing, caring love or altruism. And if we've thought this, and many of us have thought this and been taught this, I used to think this, but several verses should quickly disabuse us of that notion. So I want to look at John 3:19. John 3:19, where it says, "But men loved agapao, darkness, instead of light, because their deeds were evil. Men agape, basically, darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil. And then, I'll just turn a few of these. John 12, let's look over at John 12. And that's in verse 3. And I'm maybe breaking into the verse in a few of these just as we go. But John 12, verse 43, tells us, for they, and this is talking about the Pharisees, loved agapao, the praise of men, more than the praise from God. So they want that, adulation from men, that instead of from God. This is clearly not righteous love in that sense. I'll just reference for you 2 Timothy 4:10, where Paul writes, for Demas, he's criticizing him, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, having agapao, this present world. And turn over to 2 Peter 2, if you will, 2 Peter 2. And verse 15, talking about these wicked people, false teachers and corrupters. Verse 15, they have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, the false prophet, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, who loved agapao, the wages of unrighteousness. And then I'll also reference for you in 1 John 2:15, we are warned, do not love agapao, the world, or the things in the world. So this idea of loving darkness, loving the world, loving the wages of unrighteousness, none of these are examples of godly, selfless love. Again, the verb agapao and the noun agape really are just general words for love, like our English word love that we have today. When we say love, it can mean all kinds of stuff. And that was true of this word agape as well. Context tells us the kind of love being spoken of. I will also note that where 2 Samuel 13:1, I will just give as a reference in the Old Testament, 2 Samuel 13:1, it refers to Amnon's infatuation with his half-sister Tamar before he raped her. And it says that he, quote, loved her. And the Greek Septuagint translates this word as agapao. So again, that's the way that the Greek speakers understood that. And by the way, the Hebrew verb here is ahab, A-H-A-B, or the noun form is ahava, H-A-H-A-V-A, a term for denoting affection generally, and can be used with sexual attraction as well as socially caring for and bonding with others, just again like the English word love. And I think some elements of the Greek language share some roots with Hebrew, and I can't help but think that the Greek word agape is related to this Hebrew word ahave, right? I mean, it's ahava. It's very close, especially with such similar meaning and usage. Now, I also want to note verses showing agapao and phileo being interchangeable. Verses showing agapao and phileo being interchangeable. Sometimes we make a big deal of the distinction between agape and philia, or brotherly love, but as the United News article points out, the New Testament sometimes uses them interchangeably, seeming to show that they can be basically synonymous. I'll give you a couple examples. If you want to turn over to John 21, John 21 and verse 7 mentions, therefore, the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, that word love, Jesus loved, that word is agapao. But, and it's also in verse 20, and it's also in chapter 19, verse 26. But very close in context to this, and look back in chapter 20 and verse 2. It says, "Then she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved." That word is phileo. So even in this thing where the disciple Jesus loved, which you think of as John, sometimes says agapao, sometimes says phileo. Another one, if you look over at the book of Hebrews, actually don't go there because I'll just give you these quickly because I'll have you turn to another one. I'd like you to look at Luke 11. We'll look at two things in the same book. But while you're turning to Luke 11, I'll give you two others. Hebrews 12:6. Hebrews 12:6 says, "For whom the Lord loves, he chastens." The word loves there is agapao. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens. But in Revelation 3:19 says, "As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten." But there, love is phileo. So as many as the Lord loves, as many as the Lord agapes, he chastens. And another place, as many as God phileos, he rebukes and chastens. So this is basically an interchangeable usage. But over in Luke 11, verse 43, it says, "Woe to you Pharisees, for you love agapao, the best seats." And again, that's another example of how this word isn't always for the best things and in the best usage of love. But over in Luke chapter 20, a few chapters later here, and verse 46, it says, "Beware of the scribes who desire to go around in long robes, love greetings in the marketplace, the best seats in the synagogue, and the best places at the feast." So they love the best seats. But the word love here is phileo. So in one place they love the best seats, and it's agape, and here it's philia, love. So that's quite surprising, yes? That maybe we didn't realize that. But I do think that in the exchange between Peter and Christ in John 21, after Jesus' resurrection, and I'm not going to have to go there, but that's where Jesus is asking, "Do you love me?" And he's saying, "Do you agape me?" And Peter says, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you, I phileo you." That maybe there is some nuance in the words here because they're so close right there in the usage. But this was originally spoken in Aramaic, by the way, which is the Greek is a translation. Agape and phileo is translation. I'm not going to go through that here, maybe another time with this today as background. But I will just say now that people often get this wrong, thinking Peter couldn't progress from brotherly love to godly love. And that is just wrong. Actually, Don Hooser also points out in his article verses where it mentions that God the Father loves the Son and God loves us using the word phileo. So the Father loves the Son using phileo rather than agapao. Now I won't give you those, you just need to read the article. So I'm going to want to make a plug for that again. Now drawing to a close, brethren, I just want to stress that the New Testament Greek term agape is not limited to godly, selfless love and care. It is a broader term referring to love more generally, just like the English word love itself. Both can refer to godly love, and both can refer to love for the wrong things, ungodly desire and devotion. The context tells us which usage is meant. I will say that just the use of the noun agape by itself, as in having or showing love as a quality, like we see in 1 Corinthians 13, is more obviously meant to refer to the kind of godly, selfless love we aspire to. The New Testament certainly does use the word in that special way, but it's always important to be careful in doing word studies that we pay attention to the overall usage and particular context. And finally, I'll note that it would make a good study to see all the different uses of these terms for love, to take note of the wrong type of love we are to avoid and the right kind of love we are to embrace and exemplify, emulating our Father and Jesus Christ. Yes, the truth of God's Word is a wonderful thing. Don't you just love it?